Born into crushing poverty in China's poorest province, Li Fangwei built an empire from nothing. What started small exploded into a one-stop shop for countries like Iran. Supplying missile parts and nuclear technology, whatever was needed, Li Fangwei could deliver. He was a man who fears nothing. Not the FBI, not the CIA, not even the $5 million bounty on his head. He's operated under dozens of fake identities, evading capture for over 3 decades. Only one photo of him exists, taken decades ago. He is the shadow behind some of the world's deadliest conflicts. This is his story. To understand why Li Fangwei is so important and so dangerous, we first have to look at how nuclear weapons spread around the world. It all started with one terrifying moment. On August 6, 1945, the United States dropped the first atomic bomb on Hiroshima, Japan. 3 days later, another bomb hit Nagasaki. These two explosions instantly killed hundreds of thousands of people and showed the world a frightening new reality. Humans now had the power to destroy entire cities in seconds. People still debate if dropping these bombs was necessary to end World War II, or just a brutal message to other countries about America's strength. The Soviet Union quickly responded by testing its own atomic bomb in 1949, and the world entered a dangerous new era, the Cold War. But having bombs wasn't enough. You also needed rockets to deliver them thousands of miles away. Soviet leader Joseph Stalin immediately ordered his scientists to build missiles that could reach deep into American territory. At this point, the world split into two groups: America and its allies on one side, the Soviet Union on the other. Fear of nuclear war spread everywhere. Both sides built huge missile stockpiles capable of destroying entire nations. But the spread of nuclear weapons didn't stop there. Soon Britain and France tested their own nuclear bombs, followed by China, which exploded its first bomb in 1964 and launched a missile shortly after. The nuclear club was small, but its secrets began to leak. Soon, missiles that looked exactly like Soviet and Chinese models appeared in North Korea and the Middle East. Dangerous technology that was once closely guarded was now getting into more hands. In the early 1960s, US intelligence was understandably very concerned. President John F. Kennedy warned that by the 1970s, many more countries might have nuclear weapons, including Canada, West Germany, Sweden, and Israel. Thankfully, his fears didn't completely come true. In 1970, most of the world's countries signed the Treaty of the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, promising not to spread nuclear technology further. But treaties aren't perfect. Several countries, like India, Pakistan, and Israel, refused to sign and openly built their own nuclear weapons. Even more troubling, countries like North Korea and Iran began secretly developing their own nuclear capabilities. North Korea shocked the world in 2006 by testing its first nuclear bomb despite heavy sanctions. Meanwhile, Iran moved dangerously close to building its own nuclear weapons and quickly built the largest missile stockpile in the Middle East. Why was Iran so focused on missiles? Because for Iran, missiles meant survival. Unlike its neighbors, Iran didn't have a strong air force to defend itself. Its old jets couldn't compete with modern American and Israeli planes. For Iran, missiles were a quicker and overall cheaper means of effectively threatening its enemies and deterring invaders. But strict international sanctions made it almost impossible for Iran to get the materials it needed to build missiles legally. That forced Iran to buy these materials from an illegal global market that operated under the noses of Western intelligence agencies. This illegal market wasn't run by terrorists or typical criminals. Instead, it was controlled by businessmen who openly bought and sold common items that could secretly be used to build missiles. With nothing more than laptops and internet connections, they legally bought items like graphite and carbon fibers, then illegally resold them to Iran. At first glance, these materials may seem harmless, but graphite, for instance, normally used for pencils, can be used to make missile parts because it withstands extreme heat. Carbon fibers, used to make bike frames lighter, also help missiles fly further. Even smartphone sensors like gyroscopes can help guide missiles to their targets. These devices allowed rockets to accurately hit their targets at great distances. Iran's access to these products was strictly controlled by the United Nations, requiring special permission for each purchase. But the illegal market stayed ahead, moving deals online where they were harder to track. Western intelligence agencies caught many of these illegal arms dealers quickly, but one man stood apart from the rest, someone who consistently outsmarted the FBI, CIA, and every international sanction. That man was Li Fangwei. Li Fangwei is the most important figure in the dark world of illegal missile technology. If you were to dismantle an Iranian missile right now, there's a good chance you'd find parts supplied by him. Born on September 18, 1972, Li Fangwei's origins trace back to a remote place called Shahayang Farm in Gannan County, Heilongjiang, China. This location was part of a grim chapter in history. During Mao Zedong's brutal cultural revolution, millions were tortured or killed for trivial reasons like owning a wristwatch. Li's mother was from Gannan, but his father's history remains unknown. He might have been one of those young people forced into rural exile during Mao's ruthless purge. Nothing is known about Li Fangwei's childhood. No photos, no stories, no trace. But based on where he was born, we can only imagine the brutality that shaped him. Perhaps it was this harsh beginning that forged him into what he is today, a brilliant, cold-blooded ghost that even the world's most powerful intelligence agencies still can't catch. Fast forward decades, and Li Fangwei became a shadowy powerhouse. Authorities worldwide describe him as a critical supplier for Iran's missile system. But unlike traditional arms dealers, Li Fangwei doesn't handle bullets or bombs. His business is far subtler, yet equally deadly. His products can fit in your pocket. A gyroscope smaller than your smartphone can dramatically improve missile accuracy from miles to mere feet. These tiny components are easy to conceal. In fact, Iranian diplomats once smuggled gyroscopes and sensors directly from China to Tehran in their carry-on bags. At the other end of the supply chain, Li's tiny parts become key components in missiles capable of wreaking havoc or even sparking a global conflict if misused. Yet, Li Fangwei remains largely untouched, constantly slipping through international law enforcement's fingers. Operating out of the Chinese port city Dalian near North Korea, Li Fangwei built an intricate network of companies. Whenever the US government sanctioned one of his businesses, he would swiftly rename it or create a brand new shell company. He's changed his own name over a dozen times and established countless front businesses to hide his operations and launder money. Despite an FBI warrant issued in 2014 with a $5 million bounty on his head, Li Fangwei continues his activities with astonishing ease. Some reports suggest he enjoys protection from high-ranking government officials in China, possibly leveraging connections built during his previous role as a government official. His journey into international crime started with a company called Limt Economic and Trade Company Limited, founded in Dalian in June 1998. Officially, his father was listed as the owner, but Li Fangwei was the one pulling the strings. By 2004, his name was already on US intelligence radars when American agents intercepted a shipment of graphite bound for Iran, a critical material used in nuclear and missile technology. The US State Department quickly imposed sanctions on Limt in September 2004. However, Li Fangwei wasn't easily stopped. American spies found his digital trail because he made a critical mistake, using email services like Hotmail and Yahoo. This allowed investigators to discover thousands of emails filled with hard evidence, receipts, invoices, and explicit discussions about illegal activities. Investigators uncovered transactions between Li Fangwei and an Iranian military company called Shahid Sayyad Shirazi Industries. This company was sanctioned by the US in 2007 for trying to build weapons of mass destruction. Li Fangwei provided them with specialized aluminum alloys known as maraging steel, graphite, copper tungsten, and tungsten powder, materials crucial for missile production. Yet, Li faced increasing problems. US sanctions not only disrupted his business with Iran, but also hampered his trade with other international clients. These sanctions are incredibly powerful because the global banking system heavily relies on the US dollar. Any transaction in dollars, even one from Tokyo to Berlin, passes through American banks, giving the US government unmatched leverage to intercept and block payments. Li Fangwei adapted with bold simplicity. Every time US sanctions hit one of his companies, he created a new identity, a fresh bank account, and continued business as usual. The powerful US sanctions machine relies heavily on identifying names, addresses, and specific details. By constantly changing these, Li effectively neutralized the sanctions, allowing millions of dollars in illicit transactions to flow smoothly. He even expanded his operations using countries bordering Iran like Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Turkmenistan as gateways. These nations weren't under sanctions, making them ideal transit points for sensitive materials destined for Iran. Li Fangwei was shipping tons of specialized aluminum, key for building long-range missiles, through these routes, always staying one step ahead. In January 2007, Li Fangwei acquired a shelf company called Wealthy Ocean Enterprises Limited, based in Seychelles. Quickly, he began using it to handle illegal transactions. The US eventually placed Wealthy Ocean on their blacklist in 2009, but Li Fangwei had already cleverly renamed it to ABC Metallurgy a year and a half earlier. By the time the sanctions hit, the company's old name was irrelevant, and the money kept flowing. Even today, nobody fully knows how many companies Li Fangwei controls. Shell businesses appear briefly, facilitate shady deals, then vanish or rebrand, leaving investigators chasing shadows. What makes Li Fangwei even more dangerous is his impact on Iran's missile technology. Iran's missiles once suffered from poor accuracy and limited range, but thanks to Li's specialized components like gyroscopes and carbon fibers, these missiles were becoming lighter, more precise, and more lethal. The introduction of solid fuel technologies might sound like a small technical change, but it in fact revolutionizes the entire process. Liquid-fueled missiles take hours to prepare. They need special trucks and equipment to fuel up, which makes them easy to spot by US satellites. That gives American forces time to detect, track, and even strike before the missile is launched. But solid-fueled missiles are a whole different story. They can be hidden, moved easily, and launched within minutes. No fueling trucks, no warning signs. This makes them much harder to detect and far more dangerous. For Iran, it's a game changer. For the rest of the world, it's a growing threat. All these advancements put US bases across the Middle East and critical allies like Israel within easy reach of Iran's missiles. The threat became undeniable. The Americans understood clearly Li Fangwei wasn't just a businessman. He was actively shaping geopolitical power balances, putting countless lives at risk. They knew they had to stop him. But how do you catch someone who's always one step ahead and shielded by powerful connections? Thanks for watching so far. Let's take a quick break so I can ask for a small favor. If you're liking this video, don't forget to tap the notification bell for Dirty Digits. I create mini documentaries on financial crimes, money laundering, fraud, and much more. But just subscribing doesn't guarantee you'll see them, so please make sure to turn on the notifications to stay updated. I'd really appreciate it. Li Fangwei has always been ahead of American intelligence. Time after time, the United States has tried to stop him. They've pressured their allies to investigate his shipments, intercepting container ships filled with critical materials destined for Iran's missile factories. Often, the Americans choose not to act, wary of exposing their informants in China. Between 2010 and 2012 alone, around 30 American spies were reportedly killed in China. The country has become incredibly dangerous for US intelligence operatives. From Washington's perspective, Li Fangwei was openly breaking Chinese law. His exports to Iran violated strict international agreements that China itself promised to uphold. Yet even as American officials handed over clear evidence of Li Fangwei's illegal operations, the Chinese government did nothing. Publicly, Chinese diplomats reassured American officials, promising to shut down Li Fangwei's operations. Privately, his shipments continued uninterrupted. But why would China protect someone like Li Fangwei? The answer lies in a complex game of global politics and hidden agendas. China's ambitions in the Middle East directly oppose American influence. Beijing has played a careful double game for decades, publicly condemning Iran's nuclear program to maintain its international reputation, while quietly supporting Iran with vital missile components through Li Fangwei. Since the 1980s, China has supported Iran's ambitions to become a regional powerhouse. After Iran's Islamic Revolution in 1979, the United States placed sanctions on Tehran, hoping to stop its nuclear ambitions. In 2006, even China publicly supported tough sanctions against Iran at the United Nations. Yet, secretly, through figures like Li Fangwei, China supplied essential materials for Iranian missiles. China's interests in the Middle East are clear: oil and business. Almost half of China's oil imports come from the region. Contracts worth billions are at stake. But there's another reason: strategic advantage. By arming Iran, China forces the United States to keep its focus firmly planted in the Middle East. The greater the instability in that region, the less attention America can devote to China's backyard, particularly Taiwan. Every aircraft carrier the United States sends to keep Iran in check is one less available to defend Taiwan. It's a cold calculation, and Li Fangwei is merely one pawn, albeit a critical one, in Beijing's broader geopolitical strategy. But the impact of Li Fangwei's work extends far beyond China and Iran. Iranian missiles supplied by Li Fangwei now fuel conflicts across the Middle East. Houthi rebels in Yemen, Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Palestine, and various militias in Iraq all rely on weapons made possible by Li Fangwei's components. Entire regions live in fear and devastation because of one man's greed and China's silent approval.
And Russia launched the war's largest drone assault as a prisoner swap with Ukraine begins. NBC's Richard Engel now has more.
The situation escalated dramatically after February 24, 2022, when Russia launched its brutal invasion of Ukraine. Russia unleashed thousands of missiles on Ukraine, devastating cities, demolishing homes, schools, hospitals, and shopping centers. Thousands of innocent civilians have died or been wounded, their lives shattered by relentless missile attacks. Initially, Russia relied on its massive stockpile of Soviet-era missiles, but within months, those reserves were nearly exhausted. Desperate for more firepower, Russia turned to Iran. Iran eagerly supplied Russia with drones and missiles, weaponry directly connected to Li Fangwei. Suddenly, the threat he represents moved beyond the Middle East and reached the heart of Europe. Now, missiles made possible by Li Fangwei are striking European soil. For China, the war in Ukraine offers another perfect distraction. America's attention is divided between helping Ukraine and managing tensions in the Middle East. Meanwhile, Beijing sits back, watching as its geopolitical rivals struggle to manage multiple crises. The reality is stark. China could stop Li Fangwei instantly. They have the resources, the intelligence, and the authority, but they choose not to. For them, Li Fangwei is too valuable a player in their global chess match. His actions keep America off balance, focused everywhere but where China wants. Despite a bounty of $5 million on his head, Li Fangwei remains free. He operates openly, protected by powerful government backers. The human cost of his operations is irrelevant to him and those who shield him. In the end, Li Fangwei is more than just an arms dealer. He symbolizes the ruthless calculations of superpowers who treat human lives as pieces on a chessboard. As conflicts multiply and spread, people suffer unimaginable horrors, caught in a game they never chose to play. Li Fangwei continues his work untouched and unchecked. Wars rage, cities burn, families are torn apart, and still the shipments move. His story is not over. As long as there are powers willing to use war for strategic advantage, people like Li Fangwei will thrive, profiting from chaos and death. The world watches helplessly as the deadly game continues.